Welcome into another playoff edition of Daily Faceoff Live, coming to you live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. And as always, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app and use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk, Frank Saravalli, live in Edmonton, Frank, where this city has a 1-0 lead in the Stanley Cup Final, their first Stanley Cup Final lead since 1990.
35 years, longer than you've been alive.
A lot longer.
And more importantly, when you play catch up, as they have in the last two Stanley Cup Final appearances, 2006 and last year, life can be difficult. This is a different feel, a different vibe, and I think what I really liked after the game was just how incredibly focused Connor McDavid remains. Like, you see him at the podium and you ask a question, and it's very centered on trying to win game two. He was already thinking about game two already.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that also comes from a team who's been there and experienced the heartbreak. They know winning one game, getting to a game seven ultimately means nothing. We're going to talk, obviously, a lot of Stanley Cup Final. Stephen Wino from the Associated Press is going to be our big guest today, so we'll do a big Cup Final conversation then. We got some off-season stuff as well. But let's just start with the win by the Edmonton Oilers last night, Frank. And one of the things we talked about earlier in the week, one of the things that would have to be different if Edmonton wanted a different outcome, was that they would probably need both Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to really get going. And I felt like it was, in a way, I guess, fitting that this game was bookended by Leon Draisaitl goals.
Yes, and look, your stars are always going to be incredibly important. There's no doubt about that. But I think really the more interesting angle is how we've talked about Florida's depth a lot these playoffs and the rate that those top three lines have scored. Mm-hmm. But what became really apparent to me in game one, as tight as it was, is that the Florida Panthers are a 3-line team and the Edmonton Oilers are a 4-line team. If you look at the job that Janmark line did in OT specifically, they were able to create, make things happen. And I think a big reason why, in a game with very big momentum swings, Florida controlled a huge chunk. Stuart Skinner played really well. He was aggressive. But the deployment specifically, look at basically 4 full periods. You got a 1 full overtime, essentially. The Florida Panthers had 3 defensemen play north of 30 minutes. The Edmonton Oilers had 1. Connor McDavid played north of 30, and I mean, he's effortless and efficient. He could play forever. But I think that's an interesting tell about how this series may play out. You have your 4th line for the Edmonton Oilers playing 14 minutes.
Yep.
Jonah Gadjevich for Florida played 6.
Yeah, sorry.
I just think it could be a big disparity as you move on, and a compounding effect if you get other overtime games or games that are slugfest like that one.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, if the expectation is this is a long series, the fact that, take special teams out of it. 12 minutes was the lowest Oilers time on ice. Matthias Janmark in that hockey game at 5-on-5 alone. So I thought the Oilers' depth was very, very impressive. Obviously, Leon Draisaitl impressive. Do you think it's fair to say Edmonton needed a game 1 win much more than Florida? Like, obviously, home ice advantage, like, that part you can almost put off to the side, but, like, just for the psyche of this series, like, I don't think the Florida Panthers are sitting there in the locker room, ooh, worried. No, they're the defending champs. They're not scared. But if that would have been Florida winning that game in overtime, there might have been some guys in that Oilers room who are going like, oh, shit, here we go again.
I think that was huge for the team, for the city, for the series. Look, there was all this talk about the Oilers having an advantage with their star players, and this is going to be different, and it's going to be whatever. Well, you have to go out and do it. And to take a lead 66 seconds in and have a big swing, turn around, and be a 3-1 deficit later, it's hugely important that the Oilers, that's the first loss in the Paul Maurice era, first or second period lead, 31-0. You've punctured that, which is important. But more importantly is getting on the board. And I thought that game was even. It could have been, honestly, either team. Thanks, Captain Obvious, when you get an OT game. But I actually thought that's really how tight the game was. When you think about the second period that the Panthers owned, the Oilers had big stretches of the first and third. And then even in OT itself, Florida could have ended that game like 4 times in the first 5 minutes of OT. And they didn't. And then the Oilers settled in, found a way to pick through and put Florida on their heels and control it. But again, to that puck over glass, you might score on that power play, but you might not. And as the longer it went on, I think there was kind of this feeling I had, at least, was like, as much as Edmonton's dominating, it's only going to take one shot from Florida to win it. And we'd have a totally different feel today. Here are the big, bad defending champs that come into Edmonton, different venue, different country, different series, and yet here they are having a lead again.
It very much would have been like a, oh man, are the Panthers inevitable once again kind of conversation. We have a lot to get through today. We're going to keep talking Cup Final in a little bit with Stephen Whyno, like I said, but obviously another big part of the Stanley Cup Final kicking off, Frank, is that Gary Bettman does his sort of yearly media address ahead of the first game. State of the League, sure. He said, there's no panic around the CBA conversation. We know, as he said yesterday, there's still a full year left of it. So no one should be, shaken, worried about a lockout. But you get the sense we're close to a new CBA, not a lockout.
I think they've made significant progress. I think my understanding is that the two sides are speaking the same language, which is important. Sources indicated that they will be meeting again today, actually here in Edmonton. They said, hey, we're all in the same city. We don't have that much to do on days in between games. Let's talk CBA. And so they're meeting again here. Not imminent, but I think trending in the right direction to know that, knowing they still have a year from September. Yep. The fact that we're this far out, I love the phrase that Gary Bettman was asked about how would you compare this negotiation to previous ones, and he said there is no comparison. So it tells you how healthy this has been. He said we're in really great shape. Obviously still work to do, but for anyone that's a fan of the game or a stakeholder, to avoid any sort of work disruption is hugely important.
Yeah, it's massive. And again, you never got the sense listening to Bettman yesterday that any of it was like negotiating through the media. There were no subliminal shots being thrown. It was like a legitimate, genuine, we're in agreement on a lot of stuff here.
As much as they wanted to get it done by this Cup Final, he said they didn't really start until April in earnest. So it was supposed to kind of start in February after Four Nations or during Four Nations. That didn't happen. That's kind of why it isn't done by the Cup Final, and I'm not worried or concerned.
One thing that a lot of fans, a lot of teams are obviously interested in, the LTIR loophole. Sounds like they're going to find some sort of a solution for that, the details of which, we don't know, but the LTIR loophole, obviously a big part of these negotiations.
Yep. I wouldn't say a big part. I'd say one where both sides have an interest in finding a solution that works for everyone. I think it's on the list, but it's not an insanely high priority. And also unrelated, if you're thinking about money and the Florida Panthers being in the Cup Final, no appetite from either side to talk about state tax. So there won't be any sort of leveling of the ice surface if that's what you were hoping for. Neither side sees it as an issue.
All right. Yeah, I'm in full agreement on that too. I think it's one of those things that's just grossly overblown. Yeah. You said today on the rundown, you're like, hey, if you're worried, get a good accountant and you're good.
Well, it's not even just that, but like in the salary cap world of the NFL or NBA, like is anyone saying, oh man, the Miami Dolphins have such an unfair advantage? Like no one's saying that. Like they're not winning Super Bowls.
As a Bills fan, I can confirm they stink. The Dolphins, that is. So again, if you want to read more, there was a recap article on the Bettman press conference up at dailyfaceoff.com. Frank, a little bit of breaking news from earlier today. The Boston Bruins have their guy, Marco Sturm, is going to be the team's new head coach, and he's kind of been viewed for a few years now as sort of the next guy up, one of those flashy up-and-coming names in the coaching world. You see here his record with the Ontario Reign, the Los Angeles Kings AHL team, and he spent some times on the Kings bench as an assistant coach at the NHL level before kind of saying like, no, I want to go work on myself as a bench boss, as a head coach. What do you make of this hire? The former Bruins player now behind their bench.
Yeah, I think that's actually a big part of it, is having familiarity with the market, understanding what the expectations and standard is for the Bruins organization. He's lived it. But I think more important and impressive to Marco Sturm's resume is that he's gone through the process. He has put in the time. He came over from coaching in Europe, and the thought process was, this is the next guy. This is, one of the head coaching candidates. And with that, I think there was this expectation that he'd have this meteoric rise and be on a bench in 2 seasons, and that would be that. but spent time as an assistant, spent time as an AHL head coach, and is someone that I think has truly put himself in a position to prepare for this opportunity, and that's why he's able to get it. So really critical summer for the Bruins to determine where they're heading next. And guess what? For all the flack that Don Sweeney and Cam Neely have gotten, particularly more in Boston than anywhere else, it's done a damn good job hiring head coaches. Jim Montgomery, Bruce Cassidy. You're talking about best of the best. The criticism has been in when they've let them go. So it hasn't been hiring them that's been the issue.
I know, Pat, you just pulled it off. But again, this Bruins front office now, like you look, a lot of open roster spots, a lot of cap space, and on the left side of that, or right in the middle of the board, I should say, not a lot of like legitimate big name free agents that they need to sign. Like Morgan Geeky's important, and I imagine they're going to get something done there.
33 goal scorer last year.
Yeah, like he's going to get a portion of that $26.2 million, but
Mason Lohrei is a big deal on the back end.
But even if those two guys cost you $10 million, you have $16 million to go spend. Like if they want to get aggressive, they could. Is my point.
Well, they can, and I think they're due for a big bounce back. That seems to be an unpopular opinion. Actually, we were sitting before the game last night at, just us media guys talking, and someone said at the table, "Who do you think's in worse shape?" As we were talking about the two coaching hires, Pittsburgh or Boston. And I was like, "Is this even a question?" Like.
Yeah.
Boston's got such bounce back capability. Swayman had a poor year. They've got a top 10 defenseman in Charlie McAvoy who missed the entirety after Four Nations. You've got a play driving top 10 winger in David Pasternak and other guys that had down seasons. You find a way to add a few important pieces. Why can't the Boston Bruins be right back in the playoffs? Why not?
Yeah, like there's a lot of boxes that are checked. I think they're just a couple of really good moves away from, being able to be at least back in the mix for sure. It's not a team that I'm sitting there going like lottery again, or that I even think needs to go that route in their retooling process here, if you want to call it that.
I agree, but let's see what moves Boston makes, because that's going to determine how aggressive they are will determine what the next 5 years look like, because you're either back in contention or you're taking a step back.
Let's do an off-season preview before we get to our big segment and our guy Stephen Wino, and it's focused on one of the Bruins' rivals. The Montreal Canadiens are up on our list, and obviously a wildly successful season for the Montreal Canadiens this season. They were back in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It was so good to see the Bell Center rocking. As we head into the summer, Gorton, Hughes, they've had this process, not full Philly trust the process mode, but they seem to be very process orientated. Did the success this season change up an internal timeline, do you think?
I don't think so. I think they've been meticulous in terms of how they've put all this together. And I think the biggest challenge that the Montreal Canadiens front office is going to be facing this summer is not different than what Utah Hockey Club went through last summer, now Utah Mammoth. The lesson and game plan of the summer is don't do anything stupid. That's really it. Do not get entangled in 8-year deals that you're going to hate by year 5. Do not make a trade that you're going to regret to try and win now. And I think if you continue with this build, they've got defensemen on the way, which is going to significantly improve their back end. They've got an enviable young power play that could honestly be the best in the league. Marty St. Louis, their coach, has grown a ton. They've checked so many important boxes, and getting Demidov in and getting a taste of the electricity that he brings to that market, I think Montreal has an incredibly bright future, and I think they're a team that, quite frankly, with the playoff appearance that they made, it's not a guarantee. We know that development in the NHL is not linear.
Yeah.
But I think they've put everyone else on notice. Like, hey, we've arrived. We're here. And now it's time to take another step forward, but it needs to be organic.
Yeah, I'm looking again. We had a similar conversation about New Jersey, but with the blue line. But like, hey, Gooley, Hudson, Mailloux. I know Jaden Struble had himself a good year. He was an NHL regular. You go to the American League team, and a guy like David Reinbacher, Carrier's under contract. Like, the point is, they have a lot of defensemen. If they wanted to dip into that, we know there's always teams who want young D-men. The only danger is, and there's a couple of risks either way. Like, you could keep them all, and a few don't pan out. Then you go, oh man, maybe we should have sold while their value as a prospect was a little bit higher. But then you also risk Sergachev for Drouin.
Well, I mean, they also offloaded Jonathan Kovacevic because they had too many defensemen last year, and he ended up playing so well that he parlayed that into a 5-year deal in New Jersey. So, look, certainly you have to just there's similarities to Utah too, even though I think Utah's a bit ahead in their schedule, that it's not just when you make the trade and how aggressive you are, it's when you have a surplus, picking who to not keep. Look at the LA Kings, made the decision to trade for Fiala. The guy they send back is the prospect, Brock Faber. Like, you have to make the right bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's why they pay him the big bucks, Frank. But either way, we'll see what happens in Montreal this summer. Let's get to our big segment for the day and talk a little more Stanley Cup Final. It's the All 32, and it's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, more than 85 locations across Canada through Charm and their sister brands. And you can get a custom ring built and delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program. It all comes with an unbeatable pricing policy. Go check out their large selection of Canadian lab-grown diamonds and mine diamonds by visiting them online at charmdiamondcenters.com. Always a pleasure to welcome Stephen Whyno from the Associated Press into the show, talking a little Stanley Cup Final. And Stephen, let's just start with maybe a general overview of Game 1. Was there anything from an Oilers or Panthers perspective that surprised you, I guess, with how they played in the first game of this series?
Tyler, no, these are two powerhouse teams, right? Like, we saw this for 7 games last year, and last year was sort of the roller coaster of 3-3 and then game 7. But this is what these teams have been doing to opponents all year. And I think it was a wake-up call for the Edmonton Oilers to see exactly what the Florida Panthers were this year after going through what they thought were real big tests in the Vegas Golden Knights, in the Dallas Stars. And it's like the difficulty level got turned up to all Madden facing the Florida Panthers. I think this is exactly what that the Panthers have done to every opponent they've played this playoffs, last playoffs, the one before that, except for Vegas when they were broken. And it just looks like a classic series. And it was one of those tug of war, push-pull between the Oilers and the Panthers all game. And it just happened that a puck over the glass penalty determined it.
Stephen, it's such a great point and great way to say it, turning it up to an all Madden difficulty level. That's fantastic. When you think about how this plays out next, is this more of the same of Florida frustrating the Oilers, or do you think that because the Oilers were able to get a little bit more comfortable and pick through it, that there's some adjustments for Florida to make moving forward that could change it up a little bit?
There's certainly some adjustments, Frank, that Paul Maurice is going to make here, because the Panthers were not perfect, but they looked suffocating at times in neutral zone, specifically trying to get the Oilers, or keeping the Oilers from getting their offense going. But once the Oilers were in the offensive zone, they were dominating at times. So I think there's a lot of sort of defensive zone coverage stuff that I think Paul Maurice is going to look at. And also capitalize on a lot of the things that the Panthers did well, because there were long stretches in that game where the Panthers had the Oilers hemmed in, and Stuart Skinner had to make some big saves just to keep the Oilers from falling out of that game and staying in contention there. And so there's a lot of things, and Paul Maurice said this last night, that he liked about what the Panthers did. But also there's a lot of adjustments Chris Knoblauch has to make now, knowing how tough it was for his team just to get through the neutral zone and figure those things out, because the Oilers were really sloppy last night, and they certainly have a lot better to play, but so do the Panthers.
It was interesting to see those kind of two things. Edmonton wants to be a possession team, right? They really, really don't like dumping in the puck. I was intrigued. I was one of the areas I was intrigued by in this series. Edmonton has this very, good puck-moving blue line with the additions of Wallman and Klingberg, and Florida loves that dump and chase. And I thought, oh man, maybe these puck-moving D-men, if it's the best blue line in that perspective that Florida has faced, could it catch Florida off guard? But I actually felt like there were some of those Oilers D-men, Brett Kulak specifically, who struggled moving the puck. I felt like Florida actually, from an executing strengths perspective, Florida dictated more of that game, in my opinion.
They did, and Jake Wallman and John Klingberg seemed to regress and turn the puck over at weird times. Like, they looked like a third pair for the first time all playoffs, and I think a lot of that was the Panthers' forecheck and pressure, which they're known for. I think the Oilers knew what was coming, but until you feel it on the ice, I'm not sure you can realize what the Panthers are. And the Hurricanes saw that firsthand. The Leafs saw that firsthand, and even after winning 2 games, that they do put pressure on defensemen to make mistakes and those sort of things. And Sam Bowman and Jeff Jackson and the Oilers sort of built the Oilers to be better for these situations. But until you actually are in that situation and sort of feel that pressure, I don't know that you can handle it. And whether that's a matter of experience now that they've been through one game of it, or whether it's a matter of Chris Knoblauch needs to pull some strings and make some moves and switch the blue line that's worked so well for most of this playoffs, That's a really good question moving forward. But that's something that I think in game two, we're going to see whether that's a sort of a sustained pressure of the Panthers or whether that's the Oilers just needed to get used to.
Stuart Skinner was awesome in the second period and really gave the Oilers a chance to win when they were under siege, and got the better of Sergei Bobrovsky. What word would you use to describe Bobrovsky's game one?
Solid for the most part. I mean, and I don't even think Bobrovsky was to blame for the goals he allowed for most of that. You look at the crazy pass McDavid made. You look at some of the defensive breakdowns the Panthers had to allow it. He also made some ridiculous saves. That stop on Trent Frederick in overtime was absurd. He made a volume of saves, and I know the crowd was getting on him with the Sergei chants, but Bobrovsky was good. I mean, there were points in that first period after the Panthers took the lead where there were easily chances for the Oilers to tie it, to take the lead again, and the Bob was bobbing. He was just doing what he does and has done for so much of the last 3 years, for a lot of his career. He's just a great goaltender, and I think he did exactly. He basically he held up his end of the bargain to the Panthers for me last night. Stuart Skinner was great at those moments. Sergei Bobrovsky was great at those moments. What's he going to do on that Leon Draisaitl shot in overtime? I don't think any goalie in the world is going to stop that unless he shoots the puck right into his chest. I got no problem with Sergei Bobrovsky's game.
I thought he was kind of average in game one.
There were enough big moments for me, though, to forgive a couple of the goals. Yeah. Like that Frederick save, you're right, Steven. That was all world. Like the game should have ended there.
Yeah. So, Steven, you're from Philly. I'm from Philly. Someone said to me last night, people from Philly, they go to the airport and boo landings, which was like, that really caught me off guard. But
wow.
Do you think the Sergei chance worked? Why do people do that?
You know what? Because it does work. You know what? Because it's fun, honestly. Like, who doesn't love the chants like Boosh or whatever, Giroux, or like those sort of ooh chants, Stu, as we heard a lot of times from Oilers fans last night. It's fun for fans to do. Now, when he had made like 13 consecutive saves like throughout the first period, I don't know if that's the time. I think there's a time and place for those chants, but it's fun. I don't know. The crowd was certainly into it last night.
And the in-arena presentation in Edmonton, which I think is always top-notch, certainly plays into it too. They do the slow pan up into the goalie's face on that big screen. Speaking of goalies, I guess as I kind of go through my checklist of everything that happened last night, we haven't had a conversation yet about the goalie interference call, or the goalie interference non-call, we could say, on the Sam Bennett goal. Steven, what was your initial gut telling you? Do you think the league got this one right?
I don't know about right, but I think the league did what the league does in these situations. And Frank and I were there at NHL general managers meetings in March, where they showed us sort of replays of all these sort of calls throughout the season. And I think based on what the call was on the ice, I understood why they kept it. I was a little surprised Kris Knoblauch in the moment challenged it. Like, I didn't expect it to be a goalie interference, because even though Sam Bennett was there, it just felt like sort of a tanglement in front. I think Sam Bennett got away with some hooking and holding on Jake Walman and Brett Kulak. Yep. Yeah, like right before the goal. I think in the 15 seconds before the goal, I literally was like, I'm waiting for the arm to go up from one of the officials on a Sam Bennett penalty in that situation. But then once that wasn't called, it just felt like it was sort of two guys engaged in front of the net, and things happen. And Kris Knoblauch doubling down sort of surprised me after the game, saying, yeah, I would do that every time now. I'm not sure, given the video evidence and given what we saw GMs and what the general managers themselves were shown, that you would consider challenging that. No. And it's just so ironic, I'm sure you guys have discussed this too, that the fact that the Oilers season or playoffs got sparked by a failed goalie interference challenge and now did this is just kind of weird.
I didn't mind the challenge because I viewed it like, again, I saw the first glance, second replay, and I was like, I think there's, at worst, it's a coin flip. Because, again, I don't have the same knowledge as you guys, having been at that Board of Governors. But I was like, okay, it's a coin flip. So you take a 50% chance, and if you're wrong, even though your PK stinks, it's at 70%. So, 50%, 70%. I look at the percentages. I go throw the challenge flag.
No, I knew right away as soon as the challenge was made, I was like, this goal is staying. And it's the momentum swing that you can't have, really, because Steve, you just made the great point. Like, the Oilers lived it, these playoffs. They know how important that swing is. I'm not giving a team an opportunity. I'd much rather have one go in than two.
Yeah, and even, the debate of where is momentum when it's only 1-1 and you're on home ice. I do think it's fair. I think there's a decent argument there as well. I did think the officiating last night was interesting from the perspective of there was that one stretch where they were like, we're calling everything. And then it was like, it goes to
We're calling nothing.
Yeah, we're calling nothing. It goes to overtime. And it's so funny that like we laughed at like, oh man, puck over glass penalties always kill you. And it's like, well, no, because that's like the only thing they ever call in overtime because they have to.
It's high sticking, an obvious trip, and puck over the glass. Literally, we were saying this in the press box last night, maybe minutes before the goal, and that's what ends up deciding it.
Yeah. Steven, appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of this series, and we'll see you around the rink.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
There you go. Steven Wino from the Associated Press. I think we're frozen. Oh, there we go. Let's keep cruising along, Frank. Get to our daily face-off inbox question. #AskDFO. Can I just, I'm going to take this to ask you a question. And I'm a Jersey nerd, does the placement of the Stanley Cup final patch drive you as nuts as it drives me because of the ad on the other side?
It does.
Put them on the shoulders.
Put
them somewhere else.
Yeah, but like, here's the thing is like they sold those jersey ads for major money.
Yep.
Like they're millions of dollars. And you can't just go back to your partner and say, hey, we crushed it all season for you, but we got to the cup final and we're moving you.
No, I'm saying put the Stanley Cup final
I know, but
on.
I'm saying the reason why it's there next to the C or A is because the sponsor is on the other side. So I'm with you. I don't love it, but I just don't know that I wouldn't put it anywhere else. I think there's something special about being in that series, that game, that the patch is pretty awesome. And if it's next to the C, it's next to the C.
Yeah, it just looks so crammed. Anyways, let's move along, get to our daily bets for Bet365. Want to get in on the action for the Stanley Cup final at Bet365? They got you from game props, player props, totals, and money line. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs, must be 19 or older. They update all of their futures bets after every game. Frank, Leon Draisaitl is now has his over/under at 4.5 after scoring 2 in game 1. It's -140, so the over is juiced pretty hard as the favorite. Do you think Draisaitl can get to 5 after having none last year?
Yeah, he talked about this last night after the game, saying it's just a totally different feel being healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the fact that he didn't score in last year's final doesn't. I mean, it's 4.5. You said?
Yeah.
I think he can. I think he can get to 5.
Yeah, I absolutely think he can. Another interesting spot to kind of tinker with the futures odds is maybe a really good player who just didn't find the back of the net in game 1 and taking them now that their over-under's fallen a little bit. Yep. Carter Verhaeghe at 1.5. That number was, I think, -200 to start the series. It's -110 now. I felt like he had a lot of looks, and someone in the chat threw it out there too. He had a lot of looks that usually he converts on that he just didn't happen
and
to.
Such a clutch player too. He scored massive goals in his career.
Yeah, so again, you can take the hot hands, but there's also an angle with those futures on Bet365 to take the flip side of it as well. Frank, wanted to wrap up the show. Obviously, the NHL has been doing their awards a little bit differently this year with the videos, a bit more of a personal touch, and you shared the one today, Meredith Gaudreau surprising Sean Monahan with the Bill Masterton Trophy.
Just amazing. Take a watch.
All right, on our way.
We are here outside of Toronto today to surprise Sean Monahan with the Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy.
So buckled up. When I was asked to be part of this surprise, I was so honored, so excited. Sean stood by my side for every tribute, every walkout, and, I dragged him out there to cry with me on national television so many times, but I'm excited about this one because this one celebrates Sean. Oh my God, I see him. He's probably hiding.
What is going on here?
You won.
Oh my God.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Surprise.
Thought we were doing family photos.
I know.
Oh my God.
I thought I was going to be in them. No,
Wow.
this day is about you. So I let Brittany in on this secret a few days ago. I think she tricked Sean into thinking they're taking family photos today.
When did you come to town?
Last night.
Oh my God. Well, it's pretty special.
Sean, you mean everything to John, so it's just really special that I could be a part of this because this one's about you. You persevered through one of the hardest things and you just lead by example, and this one's just celebrating your character and how good of a person you are. I know John is so proud of you.
Thanks. Winning the Bill Masterton Trophy means a lot to me. It's a real big honor. It's a lot of special names on that trophy, and the meaning behind it, something I take great pride in day-to-day life. Being on a team, being a father, a husband, it's a special thing, and obviously fresh right now, but something I'm definitely going to be reflecting on a lot.
Sometimes life gets hard, and sometimes we break down.
John knows I don't like the spotlight or attention, so I feel like he was probably watching down on that moment, laughing at me.
Walk away.
John loved surprises. He loved kind of pranking people a little bit, so I thought this suited that really well. He's so proud of Sean. I know he would have loved the way that this happened, and you know, he's Sean's biggest fan.
Hard to not be a little emotional watching that, Frank.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it in my hotel room this morning and just had tears running down my face. First off, Sean Monahan, so deserving. He only went to Columbus to play with John, and to think about what this season was like for him and his teammates, and to be that support. When you have really tough times, I think your character shines through, and that is really obvious. And then I just think in general, the Bill Masterton, it means a lot to me personally.
Yep.
Our organization, the PHWA, votes on it, and we tell these stories all year long, and there's so many deserving candidates. The other two finalists this year, incredible stories, Gabriel Landeskog and what he's overcome to come back and play, and Marc-Andre Fleury for his dedication to the game. But I feel really proud that our organization got it right. Sean Monahan, so well deserved, and yeah, this was a special one. So it was really cool to see, and the NHL did such a great job pulling it off. Meredith is the perfect person to do it, and to make it about Sean after nothing was about Sean all year, I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really good. I see everybody in the chat as well. Great that Sean got the Masterton, and TA, great. Gonna cry again. Yes, definitely super emotional, and full credit to the NHL for putting that great video together as well. That is a wrap on an off-day edition of Daily Face-Off Live. If you want a little bit more from Frank, DFO Rundown, new episode going to drop a little bit later on today on the YouTube. It's already out wherever you get your podcast from. But tomorrow, a Friday night Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final in Edmonton. Should be a good one. Enjoy your Thursday, everybody. We're back tomorrow, noon Eastern. See you then.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Saravalli, to analysis from former NHLers, to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.